Hello, Gary.
Yep.
How are you
Yes,
doing
this is
tonight or
Gary.
this evening?
I'm doing I'm doing great, man. Thank you.
All right. Just want to go ahead and first off, thank you for taking time out of your day to go ahead and reach out to me and allowing me to share this story with pretty much the world or anybody that's interested in is listening to your journey. And with you
Uh,
sharing your journey, I hope that you're at least able to help one person, make a conscious decision and the right decision, if they are, thinking about going down that path. And as long as one person is saved, I think all this is worth it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you for welcoming me back to the program, man. I really do appreciate it.
And earlier on, we were talking, and I threw an idea out there, and you seemed receptive to the idea. And I did mention, like, once you do come home, if you would allow us to actually capture the moment, or even possibly do some follow-up interviews, like in a year or two from you coming home, and just checking your progress on how you're acclimating, once you do come home.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That sounds great. I would like that very much. Everybody's meeting me now. The person in prison, the person who's been incarcerated since he was 17. And I'm pretty sure people would like to see the person out there in the real world, living his life, working, day to day, involved in relationships, involved, you know, with with everything that makes society run, working, paying bills, doing all that. Yeah, I would love that. Sounds good.
All right, so just make sure you hold on to my phone number, and as soon as you do come home,
Absolutely.
or keep me updated. Also, I know you
Yeah,
did mention that you do have a hearing coming up really really soon. So
really soon.
we
Yeah.
would definitely like to hear from that, and I hope and pray that everything it turns out positively for you, and you are given an opportunity to enjoy life, just like everybody that's out here. You have missed out on a huge chunk of your life, as far as in the free world, and you're going to be experiencing a different world, because it's different from the time you went you've been away.
Exactly. I mean, you hear things. I've heard of things. I saw things on. You see them on commercials. TVs. But I'm ignorant to a lot of things out there. 97 to today, man, that's over 25 years. A lot has changed. People, places, and things. It's probably I probably won't even recognize it.
Man, 97, man. I go back in 97. I was
97.
I was 16 years old, I think. Yeah, I was 16, and I was going to camp. I was going to go to do my first camp program.
97.
Yeah,
That's a long
97.
time, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
If you think about it,
Yeah, man, it
you
was
know.
a world away. Yeah.
There I was, exactly there I was, at that age. My birthday's in April. I just turned 97, and to be honest, I thought I was all grown up. I thought, nobody could tell me what to do. I'm already running the streets. I'm already out here. I'm out there in the world. But man, it's I often had this conversation with my mom, like, because there was no adult supervision. My dad was gone. My mom was working nonstop, full time, and there was no adult supervision. And me and my mom talked about this, and she realizes it now, but back then she thought, okay, you're 17, you're grown up now. You can be on your own. But we realized that we talked. She's like, I know now. Back then, that you needed somebody there. You needed a parent. You needed an adult. And like I said before, she did the best. My parents did the best. And I can't blame her for nothing. I don't. I could have done better. But just that teenager who was feeling all those emotions, feeling all that pain. Just acting out.
Yeah, yeah. You just do you think it was you were crying out for, like, some for some attention, for somebody to kind of, like, guide you, or
No, absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. Everything I believe everything I was doing was a cry for help. And I couldn't scream help at the top of my lungs. I couldn't go, hey, please help me. I wasn't raised that way. Wasn't taught to do that. Of course, everything I was doing was a cry for help. I was acting out. You know, I believe when a kid does that, when a teenager does that, yeah, it is a cry for help. Some people have the fortune. Some people are fortunate to get that help, to receive it. But there's others, who fall through the cracks, who don't receive the help. Who doesn't have nobody there, and ultimately, 9 times out of 10, the ultimate result is either death or prison.
Yeah, no, yeah. There's no other way. You don't hear like when you watch Scarface, you don't see Scarface, riding off in a yacht into
No,
the sunset. Nah, you.
no, no.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, absolutely not. I mean, and in the '90s, the '90s, they had so much negative cultural influences. All those movies they had, American Me, Menace to Society, Boys in the Hood, all those prison movies, all those gang movies. The rap music was strong, hitting hard at that time. Tupac getting killed. Everybody going at it. Diss tracks and all that, and talking about gang banging and doing this, doing that. So man,
and Gary, I just want to go ahead and mention,
yeah,
mention this to you because
yeah,
I don't want to leave anybody behind. And man, your
yeah.
family is definitely in here again. They're supporting, and none of the interviews that I've done so far, I haven't seen this type of support. And I do have a few comments in here for a few from a few of your family members. I have Reggie, proud of you,
This
brother.
call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
And then
Yeah.
let me see, Diana Lopez, Gary, so proud of you, so proud of you, love you, love you. Let me see what she put. Sorry, Gary, so proud of you, love you. You're in my thoughts and prayers daily, Tia Diana. And then let me see what else do
Yeah.
I have in here. I did see another family member on here, but I am not seeing the message. Oh, Gary, we're proud of you. We're proud of you, my boy, and proud of you, my boy. And mom's watching your show. Stay down. Much love, your brother. And then,
Yeah. That's my brother,
and
my
then,
mom, my sister.
yeah, I don't want to leave behind our supporters here because we are getting some supporters
No,
in here. It's like so we have El Iceman. He's
absolutely.
been coming in here daily on a daily basis. We have M Star Media and Saludos. We have Mad Max 408, and we have Salty Rider. We have Reggie. We have Bunny tapping in from Bloomington, California, near San Bernardino, and everybody's sharing, like where they were at in '97. So M Star Media, she was graduating from high school in 1997. Mad Max 408, he first paroled in 1997. So everybody's just kind of like
Yeah.
sharing where where they're at and whatnot. And then we also have another supporter that's been coming into these chats. I think since like maybe like my first or second video is LA analyst, and she actually has a question. She's asking ask him
Yeah.
when you first went behind bars, what when you first went behind bars, was it hard to adjust?
Absolutely, it was hard to adjust. I've never been locked up before. Jail, juvenile hall, the county. It was all new experiences for me, and it was difficult. It was difficult. I didn't know whether I was doing something right or wrong. You know, it was very difficult. If there's one thing, if there's one thing that stands out to me the most is the loneliness. When you're walking through that cell door and the gate closes behind you, it just hits you. Loneliness, despair, man. Just hearing that lock behind you, that door close. Yeah, man, it was very hard in the beginning. I didn't know how to adapt. I didn't know how to acclimate to jail life. It was difficult. It was difficult.
And thank you for sharing that, Gary. And man, I'm telling you, this chat is just like
Yeah.
blowing up. It's like it's on fire. So let me see else. I don't want to miss anybody else because everybody is supporting. I have Kim C. Love you, Gary, Kim, and Art. We'll see you. We'll see you soon. And then let me see. We have your Pomona Queen. We're here, Gary, Ralph, and Susan. And then we have
Yeah.
Bunny sharing that they were in. Let me see, where were they? They were in Colorado Boys Ranch in 1997, and everybody's just kind of sharing, like positive thoughts
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
and where they were at in
And and
'97. So uh,
and thank you for that. Thank you to everybody out there, man. All my family, all my friends. Thank you. I really do appreciate it. And just like you said, I just hope my story. I hope me and my experiences, could just help out somebody, man. You know what I mean? This can help out somebody. Because nobody's perfect. I'm far from perfect. I'll be the first to admit. I'm here in prison. I didn't get here just by chance. No, I committed a horrible, horrible crime. I made a horrible decision, and and I'm paying for it. You know, uh, so I just thank everybody again, for your support. My shout outs to you as well. Thank you, man. Stay strong. Keep your head up. Keep doing the right thing in your daily lives. You know, just be there. And just do your thing, man. Do it. Do it right.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I want to go ahead and take you back,
Yeah,
to before you went ahead and you crossed over when
yeah,
you were on the main line.
yeah.
Can you take us back to the day that you decided that this was it? I'm hanging up the gloves. I'm walking away, and I'm gonna try something new for whatever reason.
Yeah,
Like how did you go about that? Did you speak to an officer, be like, hey, I need to talk to you? I can no longer be here for whatever reason? How does that exactly work? If somebody, for somebody who's never been to prison, or somebody that's been to prison, and is just curious and wants to know what the process is
yeah.
like, can you just give us a rundown of exactly how something like that would go down, or how you experienced it? Because everybody's experience, might be different.
Absolutely. Like I mentioned before on the program, I didn't do it right away. I thought about it. I thought about it for weeks. And and while I was thinking about it, I was thinking, how do I do it? How does one do it? Everybody does it differently, but like, man, how do I do it? Like if I want to do it, how do I do it? So I thought about it for 2 weeks, and I remember waking up. It was around 6:30, going to breakfast, and I remember sitting down at breakfast, and I'm pumping myself up in my head, like, all right, this is the day, this is the day, this is the day. But what do you do? How do you do it? Like, man, I never done this before. How does one walk away from, this lifestyle? So I remember eating breakfast. I waited, till I was the last one, in the chow hall, out the chow hall. And, when we come out the chow hall, the officers are lined up. And I remember seeing a sergeant right there. I never seen this guy before. Never seen the sergeant on the yard. And, I stopped and I looked at him, and, and I summed up that courage, man. You know what I mean? I summed up that courage and was like, it's either now or never. So I walked up to him and I just said, good morning, officer. He was like, good morning. I said, hey, can I talk to you? And he kind of made it easy for
You have 60 seconds remaining.
he said the words for me. He was like, you don't want to be here no more, do you? And I was like, no, I don't. And he was like, okay, cool. And, it was just that simple. And I was like, wow. It's like all that worry was like gone. So, he walked me to the program office, put me in the cage, and that was it. My journey, through that lifestyle was over. I yeah, yeah. Maybe if I was in another prison, what I mean, in a different place, it probably would have had to be that way. But that's how it was. But it was the hard part was after the fact.
call is now being recorded.
To refuse, thank you for using Global Tel Link.
Hello, Gary.
Hello?
All
Yeah,
right.
yeah, I'm back.
So
Yeah.
before
Oh,
before we continue, I don't want to miss this message because it is
yeah.
from one of your family members here. It's from Art Artcore GFX, and he put Gary.
Yeah.
Melissa is tuning in as well. She wants you to know she loves you too. She doesn't have a YouTube account, so she can't leave a message on the chat. But I guess they're using he's relaying, or this person's
Yeah.
relaying a message for one of your other family members, or one
All
of
right.
your, yeah. So just wanted to read that
Thank you.
out before it got
Thank you.
lost in the shuffle, because like I said, this chat is
Yeah.
it's on fire here over here, so it's is going up really
Yeah.
quick. So okay, so the
Yeah.
officer
So
made he made it easy for you.
he did. He did. It was kind of, it was a blessing in disguise, He uttered the words for me. And I was just like, yeah. And, but it was after the fact that was difficult, because, where I used to be from, they didn't believe me, because where I was from on the streets and who I was running with, they didn't believe me. They thought I was a torpedo. Oh, this guy's a torpedo. He just wants to come to one of these yards because he's going to do something. So I had to convince them over and over, like I'm done, like nah, like I'm not doing that. This ain't no ruse. This ain't no disguise. Like I'm done, And they kept on threatening me. Well, nah, man, we're gonna throw you back out there to the main line because we don't believe you. Especially when the marshals came to see me and they were interviewing me and asking me questions about this and that, and I just told them flat out, like, look, like no disrespect, but I still got family out there, and I'm not going to go that route where I'm going to put my family in danger. This has nothing to do with them. This has everything to do with me. I just don't want to be part of this lifestyle no more, But I'm not going to start saying this and that where I'm going to put my loved ones at danger. I'm not going to do that. I'm sorry. So they didn't like that. They didn't like that. Nah, you're not cooperating with us. And I was just like, man, what's so difficult to understand? I just don't want to be a part of that no more. I don't want to be a part of it. So that was the difficult part, being back there for 4 months, single cell in the corner, way in the back in the corner, not seeing nobody. It was difficult. It was very difficult at that time. And I remember, and I remember, and it's just like, I didn't have the courage. I didn't tell my family. The first month and a half, the first 2 months, I didn't reach out to nobody. And then letters started coming in, from family members. What's going on? We're hearing this, we're hearing that, and and man, I had to finally write them and tell them, this is what it is, and this is what I did, and this is what's going on, I love my brother, I love my brother, but at that time, I remember getting a letter from my brother. Man, I believe it was like a 7-8 page letter, and he was angry in that letter. He was angry, and I get it, I understand, I understand, but there's one thing that I remember from that letter. He kept on mentioning the word regret. Oh, you're gonna regret it. You're gonna regret it. You're gonna regret it. You're gonna regret it. That's one that's one thing that I remember from that letter. And me and my brother, we didn't speak for over a year because of that. He was angry. He was upset. I get it. I get it. He was upset. And I started thinking, is he upset because he's the homeboy and he's the homie, or is it a little bit of both because he's my brother, or what? I was confused. Man, out of all people, I didn't think he would be so angry at me. I thought he would, what I mean, be acceptable to the fact. Okay, bro, that's good. You want to bet, you want better for yourself. Yeah, and it was heartbreaking. I was hurt. Yeah, I was hurt. A brother's love is a brother's love. You can't dispute that. We didn't speak for over a year. But when we finally did, and we talked about it, and we discussed.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
We discussed the reasons why, and this is what I want for my life now. And yeah, I mean, me and my brother, we're good. We're back together. And those were the most difficult times after the fact. Some families members were okay with it, some of them weren't. And I remember saying at that time, it's just a phrase that I kept on repeating in my head. I'm not gonna let prison define me. Prison is not gonna define who I am. I mean, this is who I am. I'm Gary. This is who I am. I'm not, an active member. I'm not an SOI member. No, prison is not going to define me. I'm a human being, with feelings and emotions and with thoughts. I'm a human being, because at the end of the day, when we all do come home, and I'm not just speaking for myself, but I'm speaking for everybody in here. When we do come home, prison's not going to define us out there, whether who we were with, who we were running with, what side we were on. So, at the end of the day, we all have families. We all got people who love us and people who we love. So, and like I said before, mentioned, this was one of the best decisions that I ever made for myself in prison. To my brother, when he says about regrets, the only thing I regret is not doing it sooner. Is not having the courage to walk away sooner from that lifestyle. I remember a couple years back, right? I was in Calipatria at that time. I was already on this side. And this youngster walked up to me. He was about like 21, 22. He just crossed over. He just came over to this side. And I remember one day we're walking on the yard, and he says, he's going to groups. He sees me around from the groups, and, he tells me, "Hey, Gary, can I talk to you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no problem, man. What's up, bro?" So we start talking, and he was like, "Man, hey, I'm getting a lot of ridicule, man. A lot of people are making fun of me, because I crossed over so young, and they're telling me, I didn't have enough time. I didn't experience nothing on that side. I don't know nothing." And I was just like, you know what, bro? Hold up. Let me tell you something, man. Because he asked me, did I make the right decision? And I said, you know what, man? Let me tell you like this. I only wish that I had the courage at your age to walk away from that lifestyle. Look, bro, you did it, and now that you're here, you got two choices. You can either continue in the bullshit with what you walked away from, or you can make a change in your life, man, for you, for your family, for your loved ones, for your kids, whoever's out there, man, who loves and cares for you. So don't worry about it, man. Don't listen to the ridicule. Don't listen to them making fun of you. Just keep your head up, man. Just keep your head up and know that you did the right thing, bro.
And how old was this youngster that you were speaking to?
He was 21. He was 21 years old.
And
No, 21 years old.
do you recall how much time he had left before going home?
He had about, I think it was about 12 years left on the sentence. About 12 years left on the sentence. He just came into the system. He barely came into the system. He was a kid. When I say kid, I'm 43 years old. So when somebody's in his early 20s, I refer to them as kids. They're kids. They're kids.
And I don't mean to interrupt you here, but I do have a
Yeah.
message here from one of your family members, and Marilyn is putting,
Yeah.
Gary, your Nina, Christy says hi and that she loves you and misses you.
I love you too, Nina. I love you too.
Man, I mean, I can't even describe it. Like the support that you're getting from your family, and I really hope and pray that you do you take advantage of the second chance you're going to be getting soon, and you know, do right, and keep, make your family happy and proud.
No, absolutely, absolutely. That's the ultimate goal, man. That's the ultimate goal, to live amongst society out there. You know what I mean? And respecting other people, respecting myself. Just having positive regard and caring about the welfare and safety of others. You know, just going out there and just living life. Finally, living life, man. Because I see my family members. And I see my family members out there. You know what I mean? Married, working, raising kids. You know what I mean? And my cousin, she raised two beautiful boys, man. Her and her husband. You know what I mean? And it's, I'm proud of that. They've never had the opportunity to see what we saw or lived what we lived through. And it's just like, man, it's just, I'm so proud of that. Like
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
the cycle is finally being broken. The kids are in college, they're going to school, they're working. My little cousin just graduated from high school. He's going to college now. And it's just like it's wonderful, man. It's wonderful. I wish that upon every family. Just break that cycle, man. Break that cycle. Because it has to start somewhere. We can't continue in it. Because it's a dead end. It doesn't lead nowhere, It doesn't lead nowhere. We might think that, at the moment, it's all fun and games, partying, making some money, living it up, living the lifestyle. But that type of ill-gotten gain, it doesn't last. It just doesn't last.
And I have another message from Marilyn, and she put, let me see, and I named my son after you. After you, I love you, cousin, and I did that so no one will ever forget you.
Yeah, I know, and I'm honored, and I'm honored. Yep, my cousin, little Gary, I'm honored. You know, I'm honored, and man, I know him through pictures, through phone calls. I just look forward to that day where I get to know him in person. Get to hug him, get to see him. Get to hold him. And I look forward to that. I look forward to many things in my life.
Yeah, I could imagine. Well, just know that it's never too late to have kids. At least for men, it's a little bit easier. Um, I had my not me, but my wife. So I was 30, what, like 38 or 37 when my
Yeah,
daughter was born, and she just turned 5. So there's always a possibility. It's never too late.
it's a blessing, man. That's a blessing.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. She lost her first tooth yesterday.
I remember when I lost my teeth. I remember when I lost my front ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
So I'll go ahead and take you back to when you cross over, maybe like the
yeah.
first few weeks, or maybe like the first few months.
Yeah.
Like internally, how were you feeling? Like how were you dealing with it? Like, because mentally, I'm pretty sure like it's devastating, because your whole life, you're trained uh, to hate that, and that only no that
Mhm.
nobody that's good is gonna do something like that. So I'm pretty sure like you're
Mhm.
going over through this whole scenario through your mind for days and weeks and whatnot. It has to put a damper on your day,
Mhm.
to say the least. So what were you thinking, and ultimately, what helped you to stop thinking, dwelling on it so much, if you will.
I started. I started praying again. I stopped praying for so many years, reaching out to God. I started praying again. Just help me get me through this. Because like I mentioned before, once I did that and I walked through that cell, it was
You have 60 seconds remaining.
that drowning feeling that I was feeling, that weight on my shoulders. It was lifted. It was gone. So now here comes the silence. That's what I remember experiencing a lot back in the hole, is silence. Because all around you, back then it's all nothing but active gang members, and you know, their laws dictate, you can't talk to nobody who's called it quits, who's S and Y. So what came after that was silence. Nobody talking to you, no cellmate, no nothing. You know, I was just fortunate, you know, back there. They came to my door about 3 days later, and they're like, "Hey, you want a radio?" The officer was like, "You want a radio?" And I was like, "What? You gonna give me a radio?" He was like, "Yeah, man. You want one?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I had a radio for 4 months while I was back there. But that's just the one thing that I remember is the silence. No one talking to you, no one messing.
All right, and I apologize for the the call cutting off, but as you guys are familiar with GTL, these calls are cut off automatically after 15 minutes, which it doesn't make any sense when you have a tablet. You should be unlimited. I understand if it's the phone on the wall, but these are tablets they're calling us from, so it makes no sense that they cut off after 15 minutes. So he should be calling us back shortly. And I just want to go ahead and take this moment right now that we're waiting for him to call back. To thank everybody that's here. I appreciate the support. Um, and I do see you guys in the chat. It's moving kind of quick, so I'm trying to keep up with everything, but it's a little bit moving faster than I could read it.
This call is now being recorded.
Hello?
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you
I'm
for.
back.
I know. She cut you off right in the middle of you speaking. So if you want to go ahead and
Yeah,
take over where you
yeah,
were cut off.
yeah. The silence. It's crazy because I saw people back there that I knew. You know what I mean? For years out there on the main line, and they can't talk to you. And it's kind of idiotic in a sense. Uh, a couple of weeks ago or a couple of days ago, we were cutting it up, or what I mean, all those years, we were sharing, busting spreads together and doing all that, and hanging out, shooting the shit, and once you do that, it's like that's it. You become a stranger. You become somebody that it's foreign to them. They don't know you no more. And it's just that human connection stops. That's it. So the silence back there, I didn't, and I could say, I'm pretty sure, I was still going through, a little bit of embarrassment, you know, but I just had to tell myself, like, nah, man, you're doing the right thing. Don't worry about it. You're doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing. I just got lost in just, you know, working out, reading books, and just waiting, hopefully that they didn't send me back to the main line because, if they did, what's going to happen. I knew what was going to happen, and I was afraid of that. I don't want to get hurt, and I'd possibly lose my life in the process. I don't want to do that. So I just just kept in prayer, just working out, reading, and just hoping. And the day came 4 months later when they said, you know what, pack your stuff, you're transferring out. We're sending you to another prison. And I was like, all right, thank you, all right.
And can you paint the picture for us when you're getting transferred? Are you separated from the general population? How does that
Yeah.
exactly work?
Yeah, they separate you. They put general population in the back of the bus, and what I mean, they put the rest, up front. Chained up to people just like you, and you know, waking you up at 4 in the morning, going through R&R. What I mean, shackling you up, throwing you on the bus, and then off you go. Again, it's quiet. Nobody's talking. Nobody's saying nothing to each other. It's just silence. Silence. No interaction whatsoever.
And where did you end up landing at?
My first prison when I crossed over was Tehachapi, the 180, 8 yard.
And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
familiar with what level the yard this was. Would you mind sharing that with us?
That was a level four, a level 4 180,
So can you
and it
go ahead? Go
This
ahead.
call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
hmm
Can you
yeah,
compare Tehachapi to where you're currently at now? Because right now you're in a level 3, right?
yeah, I'm on a level 3.
So how can you compare a level 4 SNY compare it over to a level 3 SNY?
Total opposite. Total opposite. Level 4 SNY was the same thing like the level 4 on GP. Violent, violent. A lot of violence, a lot of lockdowns, a lot of searches.
And were people getting extorted on the level 4s? Where the gangs run rampant? What kind of things were going on the level 4?
Yeah, you had prison gangs. You got prison gangs on this side. You got prison gangs. I mean, I never got involved with any prison gang on this side. Because when I made that choice to walk away from the gangs, period. I was done. That was it. No longer will I be a part of any organization like that. That's not what I want for myself, and that's not what I want for my family members, the loved ones in my life. But you had your gangs, and as far I talked to a few. I said, hey, what's up? The ones that I lived around, how you doing? Good morning. Give them that courtesy, that respect. You know, they were extorting people. Extortion happens. Same thing. Drug sales, all that. Same aspects that happen on the main line. Are the same aspects that happen on this side. Because it's not like it's different people doing it. We all come, we're all cut from the same cloth. So a lot of people continue what they were doing on the main line. They just come over here on this side and continue to do it. So it's not like something new is being created. They're just continuing to do in the same old bullshit, the same old nonsense.
I think there's a general misconception that once you cross over, like everybody, it they kind of like just drop their whole gangster persona or that persona that they had on the main line, and that doesn't happen, right? A lot of those people carry bring all of that over
Does
to
not
that, yeah, to that side, right?
that does not happen. That definitely does not happen. I get it, because I've seen it many times, right? When somebody new from the yard will hit that just crossed over, and you can see the apprehension in him. You know what I mean? You can see him, you know, not knowing which way to go. You can see it. But once he gets comfortable and once he gets familiar, especially of people that he knows from his past are there already, he just they go back to the same old bullshit. And I often wonder, like, why? Why do what you did? You know, you walked away from this lifestyle for a reason. Obviously you didn't want to do whatever it was. You're tired of it. You want to change, and you come over here and you just continue in the same bullshit. You roll around in the same mud. I don't. It's baffling sometimes. I can't understand why. But then again, I have to look deeper. I got to separate the individual from the behavior and understand, like, you know what? He hasn't dealt with that internal pain, that internal struggle, those internal thoughts, that belief system, and I try, I try to reach out to everybody I can have a conversation with, and, try to, hey, because that's what worked for me. When I crossed over, I was fortunate to have older guys who been doing this for a long time, who were doing the right thing, who took their time to have that tough conversation with me. All right, bro, here it is. You're here. Which way are you going to go? You're going to go to the right or you're going to go to the left, But I can't make that choice for you. You got to make it for yourself. What are you going to do? You know? More importantly, a lot of guys say, oh, I'm going to change for my family. I'm going to change for my kids. I'm going to change for my wife. But those guys were like, man, why don't you try changing for yourself? Change for yourself first, man, and it'll resonate to your family, to your kids, to your wife. They'll reap the benefits from that. Change yourself first. Correct what you need to correct, and trust me, your loved ones will benefit from it. So I do my very best to try to help guys out like that, man. I do my very best. Some listen, some don't. Some think I'm a joke. Others, you know what I mean? They listen to what I'm saying. And I'm just grateful. It's not going to stop me. I'm going to continue to try to do right by everybody around me. Because like I said, I'm looking out my cell right now. People are out there having day room, and I wish for everybody to go home to be with their loved ones and their family. Honestly, man, that's going to happen. In everybody's own time, it's going to happen. So.
Gary,
Yeah, I'm here.
getting some water, drinking, getting a little thirsty.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, 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 a little bit. And forgive me if I'm, seem like I'm rambling on and all that.
No, I mean, by all means, that's why I'm opening up this platform. It is open mic, and I'm sure you have all kind of thoughts, that you think about that you want to share with people, and by all means, go right ahead. Like if it's gonna help somebody, make a different decision, and I'm all for it.
No,
I'm all
yeah,
for it. I'm definitely for it.
absolutely, man. Absolutely. Prison is not the place to be. There's nothing here. There's nothing here for us. You know, there's nothing in prison. Prison is not fun. There's no games here. There's nothing. There's nothing in prison. If you truly love your family, your kids, your wife, your girlfriend, your significant other, then your place is out there with them. Your place is there. Raising your kids, seeing those moments, going to their graduations, putting them in little league and soccer, baseball, whatever it is, whatever it is.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Being there with your wife, helping her, assisting her, being there with her, raising up your kids, with your parents, being there with your mom, your dad, your brothers, your sisters, is being there, is living life, man, is sharing. The holidays are coming up. Halloween's right around the corner. You got Thanksgiving and Christmas. Man, those are my favorite times of the year. Halloween and Thanksgiving and Christmas. I love those holidays. And that's where, so, man, this path, going down this path, running with the gang, running with that criminal element, doing drugs, nah, man, it's not the answer to our problems. It's not the answer. It wasn't the answer to mine. I thought it was, a short fix, but it was just, the problem was still there. You got to deal with the problem. You got to fix it head on. You got to have those tough conversations, those uncomfortable conversations. You got to have them, man. Even if it's with yourself or with, one of your loved ones, you got to have them. It's very important to have them, man. Don't keep your thoughts and your feelings bottled up, because nobody's mind readers. Nobody can know what you're thinking and what's going on in your head. So you got to voice it, especially your fears. If you feel like your loved one is going to do something bad or is going down that wrong path, you got to have those conversations with them, man. You got to. If that person loves you and cares for you like they say they do, then they will listen to what you have to say, and they will do right by you. So, yeah, for those, who are out there, it's never too late, man. It's never too late. It's better late than never. That's what I say. It's better late than never. It's never too late, man. If you think, you're too deep into that lifestyle and you can't walk away, yeah, you can, man. Yeah, you can. You know what I mean? Anybody can. You know, a lot of people say, well, I didn't have a choice. I was one of those persons that used to say, I didn't have a choice. You know, we do. We do have a choice. We have a choice in everything. You know, we have a choice in whether to continue in those toxic relationships, whether it be friends or family or acquaintances. You know what I mean? And we've got a choice to set those boundaries. You know what I mean? Nope, I don't want this in my life, man. It's never too late. You know, you just got to sum up that courage, man. You know what I mean? And if you need any type of support, man, you know, I'm here. Reach out to me. You know, hey, you need somebody to listen to you? Yeah, I got you. You need some type of advice? I'll give you the best advice that I can give. You know, because, you know, at the end of the day, man, I want to see everybody to prosper, to succeed. You know, that's the ultimate goal. You know, that's the ultimate goal. You know, I want, you know, it's like, you know, I mean, we can't wait for the next generation to make this world a better place. You know, we are that generation now. You know, we got to do the right thing so we can make this world a better place, you know, for our kids, for our grandkids, and for our little nieces, our nephews. You know, we have to do it. Us as a people, as a society, we have to do it together, you know, not separately, not individually, but together. So that's the only way this thing's going to work, is we have to come together. We have to.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
We got to stop allowing racial divide to divide us, you know? We can't. You know, we shouldn't see race. You know, we're all human beings. We're all people. You know, we're all living in the United States of America together, man. And it's up to us to make this world a better place.
You're absolutely right. And you know what? I've been looking at the analytics, and I do notice that a lot of people that are joining up are within our age range, in you know, 30s and 40s and whatnot. And you know, I've been trying to figure out a
Yeah.
way on how you know, well, obviously, you know, my idea or thought here was to, you know, get these stories out, and you know, possibly, get them into the hands of the youth, or the year of the youth. But unfortunately, I mean, that's not who's coming
No,
into the stream.
absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
the good thing about that is, like I just mentioned earlier on, is we are getting people that are in age range of 30 to 40 and whatnot, and you guys could actually help. You know, you guys listening here can actually make a difference. You know, especially if you're still in your old neighborhoods and whatnot. There might be a younger kid out there, and you know, he's running in the streets, and you go and pull him to the side and just let him know, you know, that's not cool. You know, it's not the way. It's not the way to live. You know, there's other ways, you know, to actually make an honest living, and be able to support himself, and you know, support his family and whatnot. You know, the change is gonna come, you know, when the older generation kind of, you know, steps up to the plate, and actually, you know, helps, you know, and does something about it, instead of, you know, just standing, you know, by the sidelines, and just look, and see this younger generation just go down the drain, in other words.
This call is now being
This is
recorded.
live now. Thank you for using Global Tel Link.
So I was just saying,
Hello?
before
Yeah.
your call was disconnected, you know, pretty much is up to us, you know,
Yeah.
the older generation that's actually listening here, and that wants to make a difference, instead of just, you know, standing on the sidelines, and watching, you know, younger people destroy their lives. You know, we need to pull people to the side, and let them know, like, hey, you know, this isn't the way. You know, there's only one way this story's gonna
Exactly.
end. There may be three other ways, but they're all not good. You know, you're either gonna end up
That's not
in
good.
prison, you're gonna end up unalived,
Hmm.
or crippled, or in the hospital. You know, so that's no way to
Exactly.
live.
That's exactly. That's no way to live. Exactly. You know, because I know, you know, you know, if that's the age that's listening in right now, you know, I'm pretty sure we got nieces, they got cousins, you know what I mean, friends of the family, you know what I mean, you know, maybe kids of their own, who are teenagers right now, you know, I get it, you know, if you feel or even pick up any sign that, you know what I mean, you know, the person you know is, you know what I mean, out there, you know what I mean, involved with gangs, involved with drugs, you know what I mean? Have those conversations, man. Do your best to prevent it. Do your very best. I get it. Once my father left, my mother was a single parent working all the time. I understand. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of single mothers out there, doing their best, doing their best, and I tip my hat to them. You know what I mean? Much respect, man. Mad love. I really do. You know what I mean? You're holding the household down. You know what I mean? While the father's gone or absent or no longer in the picture or even in prison doing time, man. You know what I mean? Much respect, man. Just don't allow your kid to feel that he doesn't matter. You know what I mean? That his feelings don't matter. That his thoughts don't matter. They do. They do. Listen to him. Listen to him. If he has something to say, listen to him. You know what I mean? Listen to him. If you have any fears, voice them. Have those tough conversations. They're uncomfortable. That's why they're tough. But you gotta have them. You gotta have them. You know what I mean? If you love your child, you know what I mean? If you love your family member, you gotta have them. Because of that. I know no mother. Wants to see their kid in prison, in jail. For as long as I've been. I know no mother wants that. I know nobody wants that for their child.
And let me ask you right now. You brought up
Yeah.
mothers. And I want to ask you
Yeah.
if, because there might be a
Yeah.
possibility here that a mother or a father might stumble across this platform here, and they might have bring a question where they have like a child that's kind of running
Yeah.
wild. They're going down that path, and they might ask for some advice on how what can they do to possibly intervene and kind of stop it before it gets any worse. And what would you recommend to a parent that has a child that's kind of going towards the streets, or changing the way they're dressing, and kind of going down that path? What would you recommend for them to possibly help out their child?
First off, it starts with you got to be aware. She has to be aware because I'm pretty sure every parent is. They know when something's off in their household. I mean, and once you get that feeling, once you get that awareness, and sit them down, talk to them. What's going on? You know what I mean? If you don't like the way they're dressing, change it. Change it. 'Cause I'm pretty sure the parents are buying the clothes. Don't buy it to them, regardless if it's popular, regardless if all the kids are doing it. No, no. You know what I mean? Put those so jump on their cell phones. I know a lot of kids that they have cell phones now. You know what I mean? Don't you know what I mean? I understand parents like to give their child privacy, but in a situation like this, I believe they lost that privilege of privacy. You know what I mean? If they're running the streets, no, have those conversations. Seek them help. Put them in therapy, counselors. Have just have those tough conversations. Let them know. Let them know. That where you're going, where you're headed, it's not going to end up good. I'm pretty sure they have a lot of friends. What I mean? Don't let them hang around with certain people. Don't let them hang around with some people. But when a kid is doing that, it's like I said earlier. I believe it's a cry for help. He just wants to know that you see him, that he matters. That he's just not just nobody. He matters. He is somebody. You see him. That's it. Sometimes the kids won't listen. They won't listen. But that's when you take another drastic measure. It's probably going to hurt. It's probably going to hurt you as a parent. It's probably going to hurt you as a parent. But maybe you can call upon for some help. Go out there, seek the help that's out there. It's probably going to hurt. The kid will probably be angry at you in the long run. But once you pull him out of that, pull him away from that, he'll thank you down the line. Trust me. He probably won't thank you then, but he will thank you later on in life.
And thank you for that piece of advice right there, Gary. I could not put it any better. And we are coming up to that point where I'm gonna
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
having another interview coming up.
Yep.
But I definitely we do have to touch bases sometime this week. I work tomorrow, so maybe
Yeah.
maybe we could continue on either Tuesday or Wednesday. I just gotta double check if I have anything going on. But definitely, I would love to
Yeah.
have you back, and you are you do have a lot of information, a lot of positive information. And this is what this
Thank you.
platform is. Um, like I'm not really focusing on the stabbings and all that
No.
negativity that's happening in prison. Yeah, there those things do happen and they are part of your stories and whatnot. But I'm trying not to focus
Yeah.
on just that because there's so much other things that are happening in prison, besides stabbings and murders and drug dealing and smuggling cell phones. That's only a fraction of what's happening in prison. You're having interactions
No.
with correction officers. Go ahead.
Absolutely, and I agree with you. You know what I mean? There's a good community in prison. There's a lot of guys in here who are doing their very best to better themselves. So they can go out there and they can be better fathers, sons, brothers. Better members of society. We got a community here, and
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
it's a great South Howell community. Inmates building each other up. Men building each other up. And it's just a great thing, man. There is so much more to prison instead of that negative aspect to it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, Gary, so
Absolutely.
I'm gonna go ahead and wish you a good night, and we'll be speaking
You too.
soon. And for the audience, I'm gonna go ahead and take a quick break before we start the next segment. Stay tuned, but we will be back on. I just need a few minutes to get ready. I need to get some water and whatnot, and we'll be back on. And
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, bro. Thank you for having me. And to everybody listening, thank you for tuning in and listening. I really do appreciate it. And I just, hope that, what I'm saying, resonates and, can help you out, man. Can help out, those kids in your life, those young ones. Thank you. Thank you for all the love and support. I really do appreciate it.
and Gary, before I forget, I don't, I'm not trying to forget any of
Yeah.
his messages, but I just looked at the screen and I just saw a message from Kim C, and she put
Yeah.
proud of you, Gary, and you are an educated, sustained soul. You are great. You're a great man. It shows the way you speak and carry yourself.
Huh. Thank you. That's my family right there.
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I appreciate that.
All right, Gary. So you go ahead and have yourself a good night, and we'll be in touch.
You too, bro.
All right, thank you.
Have a great night, man.
All
God
right, you
bless
as
you.
well. All right. And for the audience, thank you
Bye-bye.
for joining us, and we'll be back shortly. Okay, thank you.